I think the players are still suffering from a hangover of Enzo Maresca leaving. Now, Enzo Maresca is not universally a popular character. He's not necessarily an easy person to work with, but he has the character, the personality and the aura to be an elite level coach, which is why people talk about him possibly becoming the Manchester City manager one day. I think the two big mistakes that have been made at Chelsea this season have been, one, allowing the hierarchy's relationship with Enzo Maresca to deteriorate to such an extent that he walked out of the club just before the turn of the year. And secondly, the big mistake was appointing Liam Rosenior, because he simply does not have the CV, he does not have the experience to manage a club as big as Chelsea. And I think the players figured that out very, very quickly.
From the moment a manager walks in, you know, though, as a player, like, even the first training session, you know if you're having a manager or not. And I'm not saying the players felt that way from minute one, but there was always these question marks over him, wasn't there? I mean, if Luis Enrique walks in, or a Thomas Tuchel, instantly there's that respect, isn't there, for the manager?
No, exactly. And I think, you know, a lot of the players were upset that Enzo Maresca had left. And also, a lot of players, for what it's worth, I think, scratched their heads and thought, you know, who is this guy? Is he going to be as good? Does he have the CV to manage us? They would have given him a chance, but you can see from the performances what they think of it.
The thing is, though, right, guys, we've all worked. I've played for managers and coaches that I didn't particularly like their style of play. We won a bronze medal at a World Cup in 2015. We didn't like the coach's style of play, but we all stuck together. We bypassed the midfield. We were like, what's going on? Booted it over to our centre-forward. We won a bronze medal. Off we go celebrating, right? But we still showed up. You have to play for your fans, your family, your pride. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I think it's too easy to say, oh, you know, they're not having the manager. We'll still run. Come on, those fans have paid a lot of money to go. I know it's not as simple as that, but we've all been in jobs where we might not like the boss. We've all been in situations where we might not like what's in front of us, but you still have to show up and do your job. You're getting paid all that money, and the players are not running. Like, honestly, I thought it was embarrassing when they're standing there in front of the fans, standing there like this. I know it's, like I said, there's not really much they can do, because if they clap them, if they leave the pitch without going over, the fans are saying you're not coming and clap to us. Yeah. But I'm like, come on, guys, you know, show a little bit more.
So is it players, managers or the board? If you're going to pin the blame at one of them, which one is it?
Yeah, look, if you talk to Chelsea...
Certainly not the fans.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's not all Liam Rosenior's fault. If you speak to Chelsea supporters, they will say, you know, our club has lost its identity, doesn't feel like we're watching Chelsea anymore. You know, they don't like the way the club is being run. They don't like the owners. They've been demonstrating against the owners. They don't like the structure of the club, the fact that all these sporting directors have been brought in, and the sporting directors have to take their fair share of the criticism as well, because they're the ones who identified and signed a lot of these players. They're the ones who have signed up to this policy of signing young players to develop and giving them long contracts. And they're the ones as well who basically placed Liam Rosenior in Strasbourg because of previous relationships they had with him, I think, going back to the time when they were at Brighton, and then decided that he was ready to move from Strasbourg to Chelsea in the middle of such an important season.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was you back in January or maybe February when Liam Rosenior, when he came in, when you looked at the fixtures, you said they're nice fixtures to start with, and then I think it was you who then said, well, then it gets tough.
If it's a good thing, if I'm right, Tom, it was me. If I was wrong, I'm not.
You have been proved right, because his start was quite good, and Carve's just mentioned about the 2 league wins since the start of February. In fairness, by the way, one of them was 4-1 away at Aston Villa. But a lot of this, in fairness, with every manager, if you've got some kind fixtures followed by some hard fixtures, that can happen. You can have a good run of form, then a bad run of form.
Yeah, you have to.
He did have that good run of form.
You have to have a little bit of luck, but you know, their template, like Carve just mentioned, about buying these young players, it isn't working. I know that's what Nuco do. At Strasbourg are a completely different entity than Chelsea, aren't they? The pressure isn't really on at Strasbourg. Rosenior did a really good job there. I did a few of their games this year in Europe, but, like, it's Chelsea, so that there's going to be more eyes on it, there's more magnitude. And at the end of the day, Tom, everyone plays against the same teams in the Premier League. So Chelsea have spent so much money, but it hasn't worked, has it? Having those young players, where's that got them?
Well, OK, let's bring that to sporting directors then. I mentioned the board, I mentioned the players. and I mentioned the head coach. What about the sporting director and whoever's in charge of recruitment?
Well, they've got two co-sporting directors, Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart. They're at every game. They were at the game last night. Beth Dardigbali, the co-owner who effectively runs the club, was at the game last night. They go in the dressing room after every game to speak to the players, to speak to the head coach as well. They are in charge of the strategy. They are in charge of running the club. And this morning, and over the next few days, they have a big decision to make, because they have to decide whether to stick with Liam Rosenior or whether to replace him. Because how much of a risk would it be if they finish in mid-table and they stick to this line that we are going to back him? He needs a full pre-season with the players. He's going to be involved in the recruitment of players this summer. Do they really stick with him at a time when managers like Oliver Glasner, Anthony Irola at Bournemouth are going to be available? Because if you speak to Chelsea supporters and if you listen to them last night, they weren't just singing songs criticising the owners. They were also, for the first time, turning on Liam Rosenior as well. And I thought in his interview after the game, he turned on the players. What will the players think when they listen to that interview? And once you do that, once you say those kind of things about your players in public, is there a way back for you?
But at the same time, I understand what you're saying, because we live in an era where we feel like the manager can't say that. But as a player, if you are not performing, I think it's okay if a manager expresses that, because what used to happen at Man United is the manager would come out, you know, Eric Ten Hag, and say it was a great performance, we go again. Well, that's not good enough. You don't want to hear a robotic response. But what was crazy was Rosenior's interview compared to Chalobah. Chalobah's, I mean, the stats they showed last night, you know, Steve Sidwell and Gary Cahill.
It was the running stats.
I'm not a big fan of all this stat stuff. My eyes don't lie, right? I know stats are good, but at the same time, football is football. If you can't pass the ball, Chelsea are getting no shots on target in 5 games.
So something like
hadn't scored a goal in 5 games, and they've spent all that money.
41st minute was their first shot.
Right. They're not playing exciting football. And to be fair, Maresca didn't play exciting football either, but you could see structurally what they were trying to do. I think Liam Rosenior just looks out of his depth, and I feel for him at times, because we know what it's like. The same thing happened to Ruben Amorim. The same thing happened to Thomas Frank. Again, your original question, is it a matter of if, not when? I think it is. I think the game at the weekend against Leeds, I'd be surprised if he actually makes it that far. But then it's like, who comes in? McFarlane again, maybe, potentially. But if they lose against Leeds...
Yeah, but if they beat Leeds, he's got a final. It would be quite hard to sack him before that.
It will, but
the final will probably be against Manchester City or Southampton. How are this Chelsea side... How are they going to beat Manchester City? I mean, for a start, how are they going to beat Leeds? How are they going to beat Manchester City? I wouldn't even put money on them to beat Southampton at the moment. The only thing I would say in defence of Liam Rosenior is he's missing a lot of leaders. They do have a lot of injuries.
The leaders ain't playing for them, though.
Yeah, but I think the picture would be different if Levi Colwill was playing, if Reece James was playing, if Esteval was playing, if João Pedro was playing, if Cole Palmer was playing. Those are big players to be missing.
But Cole Palmer, like, he doesn't look right at Chelsea anymore. When he's playing, I know he's been linked away and there's been rumours about him not being happy there, but when he's playing, I mean, the way Cole Palmer's performing, you'd be surprised if he gets selected for the World Cup. And I love Cole Palmer, but his performances haven't been anywhere near good enough. And I take what you're saying, Carve, with regards to, you know, the players being injured, but there still is Enzo Fernandez out there, Cucurella. When you've got all these whispers coming out the dressing room, Enzo had to get that.
He banned one of them.
Exactly. Cucurella, there's whispers when they're at camp and internationally. So the unrest, it looks like it's going to get worse until he goes, realistically. Look at what happened to Thomas Frank at Tottenham.
Well, it's quite interesting that, because, Carver, you mentioned a few names there. Do they need, at Chelsea, for fans and certainly this current squad, a big name? Because you mentioned Iraola, all right, you mentioned Glasner. Well, they did that with Graham Potter, someone who was doing very, very well at, you know, coincidentally, Brighton, went to Chelsea, and that didn't seem to work either. Do they need someone who is a bigger name, who's done more than that, albeit Glasner has won trophies?
They've talked to bigger names in the past. They've talked to Hansi Flick. They've talked to Luis Enrique. They've talked to big names. But I think the problem they've got is that the big name managers don't want to work in this structure. They don't want to work under the sporting directors, the different sporting directors they've got now. I think, what is it, 4 or 5? It is a very sort of collegiate way of doing things behind the scenes. Lots of meetings, lots of discussions. People take decisions together, and at the end of the day, Behdad Eghbali is the one who calls the shots. If you're a Luis Enrique, you want to work closely with one sporting director, Luis Campos, who's the best in the world, and you want to be left to get on with your job. So I'm not sure, you make a very good point, but the kind of big name managers who are out there, I think at the moment would say, I don't want to go to Chelsea.
So will the structure change? Can the structure change?
I don't think
they have to, but I don't think it will.
I don't think they will, because
they want to keep him as well, don't they?
Yeah, I don't think the structure will change, because they've spent billions of pounds buying the club and setting up this structure, and they have faith in this structure. I think the old-fashioned way of doing things, which would probably turn out to be more successful, is if you went out and appointed Oliver Glasner and you went and got Dougie Freedman, for instance, to be the director of football, and you left them to it. And there's a good chance it would work, and if it didn't, you'd replace them. But they have built this massive structure where they can't go and get a Dougie Freedman because they've already got 3 or 4 sporting directors. And I'm not sure somebody like Oliver Glasner would want to go there, because he would want assurances that he would have total control, which is one of the reasons why Enzo Maresca left.